Hello again. I'm usually I try to be a little bit more on the funnier side of things because I also try to talk some business and some serious concepts. So if I were to be this young guppy coming in heavy swinging with some heavy subjects, that wouldn't have been as well as received, right? And granted, I get like 3, 4, 5, 10 views on videos and I still keep going. So, anyways, so that even though that's a little bit better received than not received, right? I didn't want to come in and be like, I think I know some shit about business, this and this and this. I'm, but at the end of the day, I have worked at what, perhaps 10, 15 different companies so far. Usually, usually I'm quiet, out of the way, so I get the bullshit jobs, right? And when you are easily I guess when you don't argue and complain about doing the shitty work like washing the dishes, sweeping the floor, putting away the cataloging of the bullshit, right? Doing the extras, right? Whereas the I guess the more popular kids try to skate by a little bit more in your face, but also a little bit lazier. Like the expectation for some people is a little bit less than other people, right? Regardless of the pay. So one of the things that I do think it's crucial for running companies, and granted, I do a little marketing company, and I say company, right? Right now, it's an art project. In 2026, I'm gonna take this thing seriously again, and I'm gonna touch upon heavier subjects like pimping 101, or managing your people. So a good team doesn't happen by accident. It is built when leadership decides to run a tighter ship. Not louder, not harsher, just clearer. Most teams don't fail from lack of talent. They fail from fuzzy expectations, unspoken resentments, and rewards that feel random instead of earned. At lxmnv.com, we believe that clarity is respect. Clear tasks, clear ownership, clear standards. When people know what winning looks like today, they show up differently tomorrow. A strong team has overlap, not silos. Overlap creates accountability. It invites feedback between teammates, not just top down correction. When people know their work touches someone else's, pride goes up and excuses go down. And here's the truth most leaders avoid: the top 20% sets the culture, whether you nurture them or ignore them. If you pour attention into your highest performers, you don't just reward output, you model behavior. The rest of the team watches who gets time, trust, and responsibility. We don't shy away from winner mentality. We talk about it openly. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes within the moral and legal boundaries. Isn't burnout culture, it's ownership culture. Some days require extra effort. Some weeks require sacrifices. When stacked intentionally, strong days become strong weeks. Strong weeks become strong years. That's not just business. That's how adults build something worth being proud of. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess that summarizes it pretty well, right? One of my pet peeves is is having had the experience of running a couple businesses and failing, and trying to pay these employees who not only not didn't do the job, but they fucked up the task. So I have to pay them, excuse them, go fix the job, so that the customer pays me, and sometimes the customer doesn't. So I paid the guy to train him. I paid the guy to fuck up the job, and then I paid him to go do something else while I fix his mistakes. So it was just like 3, 4 times a loss for a boss, right? So one of the things that I had to notice quickly is I can't afford a $60 mistake. You know, if the kid's an idiot, then he's an idiot. I can't keep doing that. And then sometimes, um, like I work in a shop, right? Maybe you don't use the floor jack correctly, and you damage the bottom of the car, or you when taking off the hood, you let a corner hit the windshield and shatter the windshield. Well, that's a $700 mistake, right? So some mistakes are just very costly. And so in the business, on the team, we try not to have idiots around, right? But then in that same regard, we understand that 40 hours a week is only a limited amount of expert time, expert on hands, or expert hands on the job, right? Because what most of us only want to work 40 hours. So the capable hands are only available during a certain amount of time. And then during that certain amount of time, let's be realistic. Maybe maybe we do 60-80% of the effort, right? Like we know it's gonna be a long week, we know it's gonna be a long year. So after first couple weeks on the job, the excitement wears off and we get into this coast, like a couple a couple low effort areas, right, to save yourself some energy because you got to do this for a while. And then you look at others and you find the shortcuts, and then the enthusiasm that we first had for the job, for the dream job, quickly fades once we are faced with doing repetitive tasks over and over. And so it's easy to take shortcuts. It's easy to forget some of the key principles, except for a boss. Yeah, sometimes it's also acceptable to let the slop of the operation kind of get washed away in the profit. But sometimes the profit is just so small that we can't we can't realistically, like in the car market for example, right, we can't realistically just design new cars every single year and expect to have everybody in the world want a new car that same year. It's just kind of not really a sustainable system. So at some point we have to understand that, let's say, ford ford Toyota, right? Ford, Toyota, boom. Not any specific car company, but some big company is what, doing 60 billion in revenue. They have all these plants and they have all these expenses and they have all these investors that they got to pay out. And so they're anticipating some huge profits, whereas if they cut down, let's say like 20% of the task force, and brought up the standards of the other 80%, including the top 20%, right? So if we raise the standards and the capabilities of our top 10%, give them a little bit more empowerment and responsibility, and let them take off, right? Then we also go to the bottom 80% and we talk to them like, here's some clear boundaries, here's your roles, here's um how you guys have to cooperate with the next guy, like amongst you guys, right? And I'm talking like a boss at the moment, but I'm unemployed as fuck, and I have 35 dollars right now. That's weed money though, so I don't have anything. So I'm unemployed talking like a boss, but I'm just putting myself in these situations because if I'm troubleshooting a failing business, right? Revenue looks good, the branding is great, but there's just some underlying slop, some attitude, some bad apples, some theft of company time and company resources, just a lot of stuff, and people wonder how businesses go out of um, die, right? Go out of business. Um, is yeah, sometimes is just a poorly run organization. So, and I think we will hit that a few times in this near future, right? Because we've invested into some bullshit. We've invested into some hypothetical money, and the reality is quickly setting in that I'm like as far as the business world, right, in the Pacific Northwest. I know I've already spoken with a few business owners, and we all know that there's a silent implosion, economic implosion that's been happening for the last couple of years, right? We just get months of dryness, right? So where uh, I don't know, since 2020, right? The COVID bullshit. It's just been this inconsistent, this and this and this. And then 2024 and the beginning parts of 2025, that's when we really felt, around Christmas time, there was not very much money, not much business happening, if we think about it, right? So people are trying to hang on. And that's also the stingy mentality. But that's also because people have pirated as many of these systems and jobs as possible and the customers, so that there's very little trust amongst the consumer and the company, right? There's always these fine lines. There's always the fucking loopholes that you could get exploited on. There's always these scammers, right? And so if we are living in this culture of all these shortcuts and bullshit of trying to get over on each other, then perhaps the root of it is like, let me build a strong team for me, right? So, and that's what I've been thinking about it. If I were to like, yeah, I do some content, build some businesses, but I do a lot of fucking research, right? So I can't give you stupid advice. I can't give stupid advice to Elon Musk or to any of the celebrities or to any of my former bosses who's like, hey, I need help marketing. Like, I just can no longer give out some bullshit opinions, right? So I had to study. I had to refine my work. I had to this and this and this. So as we're trying to raise up the standards of the people, um the more serious side of things is that the businesses have so much say in our economy and the way our communities play out, right? So we can clearly see where where the good businesses are, where the rich neighborhoods are, where the bigger economies kind of go, the big cities, whatever, and what their main exports are, right? So Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, my area, looks like a pretty big hub of commercial activity. So if we are over here in this beyond full, abundant opportunity of the Pacific Northwest and all the trades and all the crossroads of all the economies that flow through the system, and we're still kind of broken, bitter, and this and this and this. Well, perhaps like we're out of ways of scamming each other, right? Let's think about building something that can withstand 5, 10, 20 years. And then some cultures even try to build businesses that can be 100-year businesses, right? And then I wrote a book with a mentality of, what if we shift the next 1,000 of years with a little bit of Christian perspective, right? Um, well, it's an essay, but I wrote 8 books, blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of more along the religious side of things, which I try not to take too seriously, but I do take seriously. And I do speak out publicly about it because it's important to me. But it's also, words are a way of freeing or opening each other's eyes, right? My ALX Proverbs book is made for sharpening iron. In the Bible, it talks about, as the iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen the next. So, and granted, not every man wants to be sharpened, right? Some people get hit with some iron and it fucking hurts, right? Some butter gets hit with some iron and it melts and it chips away and it cuts. So not everything can be sharpened with a knife. And yeah, I guess for that I'm sorry, right? The truth hurts. I've also had to face the truth. I've been plenty delusional. I've been plenty weird. I've been plenty off the wall and optimistic and this and this and this. But at some point, the truth just greets us, and I'm hoping that my approach is a little bit more funny. B is, yes, I do seem a little bit more aggressive and standoffish and specific with my words, but that's also because I don't want to be ignored. I don't want to be forgotten, right? So amongst this sea of fucking content, Christianese, stupid, funny fails, and just a whole bunch of other stuff that we're into, right? And even the good stuff. Um, how would I stand out? Perhaps it's my Adidas little vest. Um, but it's also clarity of thought, right? So the reason why I maintain these low views is I know to a large degree, because I'm weird and because my vocabulary is kind of refined, to pique the interest of a boss, or to pique the interest of a person who has wrestled with the same idea of, I'm managing 15 people and 8 of them are not performing, right? So 3 of them, 4 of them are killing it. There's 6 of them that are kind of just getting by. And then there's 4 solid motherfuckers who are just stealing, killing the time, blah, 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 right? And what did I do, right? Because I like all of them. I don't know how to do them. And so, yes, sometimes the truth teller gotta come by, right? Be like, hey, we gotta trim the fat. Like, we can't keep selling thin air to people. Anyways, this was gonna be like a 3-minute video. What we talked about, yeah, um, what we talked about was give the top 20% more attention than you have been, right? And then tell the bottom 20% to step it up because the standard is a little bit higher than they thought. And remind them that the boundaries was, I give you money, you give me the best of your abilities for that hour, right? Or you give me a job well done, a project done type of deal. There's not really too much gray area for being like, oh, but it said that on Friday you can give me 30% and be on the phone and cuss out my customers and still kind of come up short on the money, miscounted once again, right? For the 17th time this year. Somehow you're a couple $100 always shy. So it's like, what exactly did we agree to? And the same thing for the employer, right? The reason why I can't keep a fucking job is because I come in, I'm like, okay, you give me decent pay, but I give you the best of my abilities for the time that I'm here, right? Sometimes it's commission to where it's per project, but sometimes it's for the hour. And I'm like, well, in that hour, I'm capable of doing a lot more because the task the 7-hour task that you gave me took me 3 hours, right? So what do I do with the rest of the 3 hours? Well, I'll go and pick up other tasks, or I do this and this and this. And so in a lot of companies, this clear communication did not happen. There was not a benefit to being a top performer. Matter of fact, I've always rubbed shoulders with my teammates, and some people were like, "You're making me look bad," and I just got so sick and tired of it. I'm not even looking for jobs, right? So, because I know ultimately I'm gonna be rubbing shoulders with some old geezer with some fucking just ego and 20 years of experience in the same exact position. Like, okay, yeah, sure, good for you, buddy, right? So, yeah, maybe I will. And doing a job, kind of, you gotta swallow some pride. Working on a team, you gotta swallow some pride, and I think I'm decent enough with that. But I'm also understanding, like, I may look young, but I have a lot more experience. I'm well read. I don't spend my weekends watching TV. I study, I write, I interact, I work, and then I do it all over again 7 days a week, right? Simply because I made a different set of choices. And and somebody that doesn't look like me, that doesn't think like me, and that doesn't value anything that I value would of course have a problem with that, right? But a boss usually doesn't. they have some problems. They're always trying to put out the fires. They're tending to the team. They're trying to make sure that the business goes in the right direction and that the customers are happy and that the team is provided for. And so that's exactly where where I think, right? So in the interview, I usually do well. I'm like, oh, blah blah blah, we get along, and then along the teammates, the $50,000 crowd, right? It's like, look, motherfucker, you're doing too much, and I don't know. I'm just kind of sick and tired of that bullshit. So I figured I can do nothing all day and try to make $50,000 a year, um, because this is a lot more than most people would ever do. you know so anyways, and this is not to talk shit, it's just to acknowledge that I have a little bit more confidence than you think I do. And even though a lot of times I part ways with some former employees, it's never my loss. you know um it's never like a bad employer cannot, like, it's never a loss to not work out with a shitty boss, right? Or somebody who doesn't have boundaries and better communication and better workflow and know how to handle different calibers of talent, I guess, right? This is really becoming a long video, so I'm gonna cut it out. Or am I? Let's see, what are you guys up to? What are you guys up to with your life? I sounded hella judgmental for a second, huh? I also get annoyed. I try to be patient. I try to sound kind and and soft because I don't want to hurt your guys' feelings. But at the end of the day, like, it's a brutal fucking world out there, right? Nobody is out here giving me chances. No, absolutely nobody. And then I'm looking around and I'm like, all right, whatever sloppy mess of economy, social interaction, community life, the safety, just the overall, the way the world worked in like 2024. I was just like, you know what? Let me just come up with my own system and start talking about it, because maybe some people will be like, you know, too woke. Like, let's get back to the basics and the fundamentals, and doing good business and rewarding good work and rewarding people that work harder and do more is like, is good fucking logic. Like, let's get used to that idea. So anyways, good night. Happy birthday.